Hey everybody, back again to look at some horror DVDs. Wearing this ugly shirt. I bought this like several years ago at the Halloween store. That was pretty cool at the time, but it's definitely kind of ugly. When else am I going to wear it? So here we go. One of my top 3 movies of all time. The original Halloween from 1978. Perfect movie. Simple story, but I could watch it a million times and it always feels fresh and new to me. I remember I saw this in theaters for the first time about 2 years ago. They were playing it at one of the local theaters, and it was a great night. We saw this one, had an hour in between, and then we saw Possessor, the Brandon Cronenberg movie. Good night. Gonna keep going with some John Carpenter movies. Assault on Precinct 13. More of a action movie, but we're gonna put it in here. Not one of my favorites, but definitely a good one. They Live, John Carpenter featuring Rowdy Roddy Piper. This movie is actually playing at some of the theaters around here, but nothing within a half-hour drive, so I don't know if I'm gonna drive 40 minutes to watch a movie that I already have on DVD. But I'm glad they're doing those kind of things. They were playing Evil Dead 2 last week. I never got around to watching it. I can watch it free on Prime. In the Mouth of Madness. I watched this movie last week. Didn't like it as much as I remembered. But still a classic of sorts. And the church where this movie takes place, that is probably not even half an hour from my house. Driven by it a million times and didn't even know that fact until a couple years ago. I think I saw somewhere the members of the death metal band Tomb Mold. They took some pictures in front of it, and I don't know, it was on social media or something. So I was like, oh yeah, really, that's it. And I watched the movie again, and there it was. Big Trouble in Little China. Again, we're talking more of an action movie. A little bit of humor. But everyone loves this movie. And finally from John Carpenter, we have The Fog. I watched this one about 2 weeks ago as well. You know what? Something about this movie. A lot of people say it's a classic, one of the best John Carpenter movies. I can't really credibly nitpick it, but something about it just kind of it glosses over me. It doesn't really suck me in. Let's look at some Dracula movies. This is a 4-pack of old. Is Christopher Lee in all of them? I believe he is. Horror of Dracula, Dracula has risen from the grave, Taste the Blood of Dracula, and Dracula AD 1972. Not too long ago I watched Horror of Dracula. I'll get around to watching a couple more of these. Another Christopher Lee Dracula movie, The Satanic Rites of Dracula. That's a pretty good one. Let's go back to some old classics. This is Romero's original Night of the Living Dead. Again, I think this movie's public domain, so there's a million versions of this around. I'm pretty sure I got this from the dollar store. I love this along with the remake from, 1991. They're both great. Not so great is Diary of the Dead. I got this around the time it came out. Watched it once. I don't think anyone really thinks this is very good. And I never watched it again. What was that one, Land of the Dead, that came out a little bit after this? I thought it was a little better, but still pretty bad. How do you pronounce this? S and Man? S&M Man? Basically, this is a documentary about extreme horror. So it's been so long. talks to fans, filmmakers. The one I always remember is some extensive interviews with the Toe Tag guys. I never watched any of their movies. That's definitely not my thing. But it was definitely an interesting documentary. From Dusk Till Dawn, Harvey Keitel, George Clooney, Quentin Tarantino, Juliette Lewis. I remember when this movie first came out on VHS, my friends and I rented it a million times. Definitely some things in there that we shouldn't have been watching at the time. I think there's a part 2. Don't think I've ever seen this. Sorry, I don't think I've ever seen part 2. I've seen this one a million times. But not in the last 10 years, at least. Reanimator. Never seen Bride of Reanimator. I might get around to watching that one soon. Based on a H.P. Lovecraft story. Yeah, been a long time. Ninth Gate, another movie that has been regarded as an underrated classic. A supernatural mystery thing. A lot of occult elements. I'm definitely putting this aside to watch again. One of my all-time favorites, The Blair Witch Project. Still creepy after all these years. The remake from several years ago I thought was pretty good, even though that was by far the worst movie-going experience I've had just when it comes to teenagers yapping, cell phones, all that stuff. Usually it's not that bad at all where I live, but that was the worst one ever. But 5 out of 5 movie. The second one, Book of Shadows, I watched it a couple years after it came out. I didn't think it was very good, but some people I respect have said some good things about it. Some time's passed. I want to check that out again soon. Ju-on, White Ghost. I don't think I ever even really got around to finishing this, but I believe this is the original Grudge movie. So this was a Korean movie, and then it would be remade in the US as The Grudge. And I was never really into those movies either, even though I did watch them all. I went to a jack-o'-lantern display presentation thing with my son last night, and I felt like such an idiot. They actually had an up-close version of the girl from, is it The Grudge or The Ring? I'm being an idiot right now. Just a close-up of her face, and I was there like in front of a lot of people like, oh yeah, The Exorcist, there's The Exorcist to my son, and it wasn't The Exorcist. Fail. But Phantasm, the first one, I think I've seen the first 3. Were there more? I totally forget. This is the only one I think you really need to see. I guess part 2 was pretty good. Not a huge Phantasm guy. I always had this expectation that it'll be a little creepier, and something about it is a little silly. Samson versus Vampire Woman. Another dollar store purchase. Can't say I ever got around to watching this one. Okay, The Human Centipede Part 1. When I first heard about this movie, I was kind of, disgusted by the concept, like I think most people were. But, I don't know. I mean, I guess there was a time when you just kind of want to watch all the current horror. And I did pick up a copy of this, watched it once. I thought it was both a better movie than I expected, and not quite as disgusting as it's made out to be. But I never watched it again. One time. But expanding on the Human Centipede stuff, part 2, yeah, it's definitely like some reprehensible stuff in there, but it definitely kind of blew my mind. I was like, I thought it was kind of a kind of a work of weird genius in a way. The third one, it was so over the top. I didn't like it. It was just too much, too silly. But again, yeah, Human Centipede Part 2, again, a bit of a loss. Weird classic. The Last Exorcism. This is a really good movie that I don't think got its due. When it came out, people thought it was a decent movie, but it's definitely been obscured to history, I think. This came out 2010. Yeah, it's kind of an exorcism thing in rural Louisiana. Creepy movie. Classic splatter pack. So two old classics. You got Drive-In Massacre and Driller Killer. Driller Killer was a Ferrara movie, I believe. And the Drive-In Massacre. I don't know if I finished that one. So that one's definitely a great movie. This one looks good. I'm going to get around to that. 1977 and 1979. Trapped in Ashes. Sorry, Trapped Ashes. This movie came out 2008. Anthology movie. I never heard of this. I bought it because I saw it for a couple bucks somewhere. I thought this was pretty good. I like anthology movies. Had a Halloween theme to it. I thought it was really good. Die Hard Dracula. Some old low budget Dracula movie that I never got around to watching. Roger Corman Creature Collection. So, 5 Roger Corman movies. Attack of the Giant Leeches, The Wasp Woman, Creature from the Haunted Sea, Last Woman on Earth, and the one that I remember the most is A Bucket of Blood. I think that's one of his earlier movies. The Fan, maybe more of a horror-adjacent movie. I heard this movie was kind of a mind-blowing experience. I couldn't find a place to stream it back in the day, so I did shell out some money for a copy. So this is, I believe, a German movie, and it's about a teenage girl or a young woman that is a big fan of what seems to be like some kind of like new wave band back in the 80s. And I guess the big twist I was waiting for was she finally meets the guy, and I think she gets a little bit scorned, and she kills him. So, you know, in the modern day, that's not that much of a twist, but an interesting movie for sure. Cronos. This is, I believe, the first feature film from Guillermo del Toro. Could be wrong on that. I believe Ron Perlman's in here. This movie never did much for me. Drive-In Cult Classics 32 movie collection. He used to find these kind of things at the Targets and the Walmarts of the world. I don't see these packages as much as I used to, but you know, it'd be $10. Actually, I get a lot of these at, for the Canadians out there, Zellers, which I hear is coming back. What that's going to look like. So again, more low budget horror and exploitation movies. Not a movie, but just kind of found this. Roseanne, Tricks and Treats. You know, I was never much of a sitcom watcher, both past and present. But Roseanne was a decent show back in the day. And the Halloween episodes they're good too. Carnival of Souls. This is a movie from, when was this? I'm gonna guess the 50s. Great movie. It's Nice atmosphere. Still holds up. Not too long. And finally, Cloverfield, which would turn into at least a 3-movie series. And none of them were great to me, including the first one. Kind of a found footage thing. J.J. Abrams. Yeah, I was never into these movies. That's it for this edition. See you next time.